It is 8:02 a.m. and I'm going to go ahead and call this special meeting of the Des Moines School Board to order here on Wednesday, July 1st, 2020. Ms. Jenkins, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Barron? He was here.
Here.
Ms. Bradley?
Here.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Cody?
Here.
Ms. Delagardelle?
Here.
Ms. Sawyer?
Here.
Okay. Our first order of business, I believe, will be to approve our agenda for this morning. If I can get it to load here. I believe we just have one business item this morning, which is our deliberation on our candidates. Yep, discussion and selection of District 1 vacancy and appointment. I will take motions to approve our agenda today.
Move approval.
Oh, second.
We have a motion by Caldwell Johnson and a second by Sawyer to approve our agenda this morning. Please call the roll call vote.
Sorry. Mr. Barron?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Cody?
Yes.
Ms. Delagardelle?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Okay. So we have approved our agenda. So we have one item of business, which is the discussion and selection for our District 1 vacancy appointment. Ms. Jenkins, I believe, did you, yep, you sent us out the tallied results. I'm pulling those up now. Sorry, my computer has been so weird lately. Okay. So based on our sheet, would anyone care to make any nominations based on our board applicant rankings or motions?
Can we just talk about that for a second then? So,
well, we have to actually make there has to actually be a motion on the floor before we can have a discussion.
right, but are we going to do this for like a couple of people or for one person, or I don't really know the framework here.
So last time when we did this, we entertained motions from board members and then had conversations about that particular candidate, and then we took a vote based on that motion, and then if that motion failed, we made a secondary motion. I believe we made several motions last time before we came to a final decision. So we're doing the process slightly differently this time, but senior board members, correct me, do we need to have a motion on the floor before we can discuss?
I don't know that it's necessarily required. That's certainly how we did it the last time, but that was the first time we had really actually done it that way.
Oh, okay.
All two. Maybe a place to start is since we have two that, clearly are, the top two just basically based on the vote. Is there any desire to discuss the top two, or if we think that there's a different cut point, just to begin to discuss those in some sort of order? I think that that's reasonable, and I would make a motion to discuss the top two.
We actually have a top three because I think we have a tie for the number 2 slot.
Okay, I didn't have the rubric in front of me, so.
No, that's fine.
So I would make a motion that we would
Unknown
discuss the top
participant
3
is now joining.
candidates.
It would probably be helpful for people who are participating to also know who those candidates are, since we are in open session and likely the results of the tally should be shared as well.
Do I need to say those names, Terry?
I would say so, yes.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion that we discuss our top 3 candidates: Jackie Norris, Kimberly Monterano, please forgive me if I pronounce that wrong, and Lanen Bacam.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Bradley and a second from Cody to discuss the top 3, which are Norris, Martirano, and Bacam. So I would open the floor up to discussion by my board colleagues.
Well, I would just
Unknown
open
participant is now exiting.
by thanking all of our candidates for not only submitting and advancing their names, but participating in the interview process. We had a very diverse pool of candidates, and I think all of them brought interesting perspectives, backgrounds, and experience to the table that likely we could have built on with any of them. We're now in a position where we have done our rankings, and we have our top 3 candidates. And I would just offer that any of them, I think, could step into the role. I think my question at this point, and the way I'm sort of thinking about this, who is ready on day 1? And who is the individual that could literally step in at this very moment and not have a steep learning curve, but could really work with us as we move through the course of the next several months. We've got a lot on our plate, and I think that's the lens through which I'm really evaluating the 3 candidates. And I would certainly like to hear what my board colleagues say, but I think my criteria at this point is shovel ready, day 1, ready to just step into space and do the work, and who's best prepared to do that right now.
I concur with everything that Terry's just said, and I know for me, I'm looking for someone that is ready to get things going, being that I was in a similar situation. Everything moves very quickly, so you need to be ready to go. And I would just like to bring up, I think all 3 candidates are very much so qualified to do this role. I think they could be ready day 1. I think the one thing that I look at, and hope it's appropriate to say this, but I do look at Kim for the fact that even in losing an election, which she was a part of, she was a part of this process. After losing, she still showed up for board meetings. She even attended our virtual meetings. And so she's caught up on all of the work that we're doing. And that's not to discredit any of the other candidates. But I would kind of check to see who was on our meeting each time. And so she is very familiar with our work. And so I know for me, that is something that I think is truly important. Not that the other ones aren't, but I think that is something to take into consideration. I know that Jackie brings her own unique perspective with being on a board and reporting to a board and knowing the ins and outs of how everything works. And she's definitely qualified. Lanen brings his own unique perspective, I think, from, serving in the military and not kind of taking that path where we see some of our high schoolers take. And so I think he brings a unique lens to all of this as well. So I'd like to hear from others, but those are just my thoughts, my beginning thoughts right now.
And I will go ahead and share my thoughts on this. I agree with everything that has been said by both Terry and Dewana. We were very fortunate to have so many people interested in wanting to step up to the plate and join us at this board table. The one thing that resonates with me was a question that was asked of us. I think it was by Maisie, and Terry's response, which was, we are a board of people who bring our own experiences, our own expertise and knowledge, and that we're looking for somebody to just help complement that. And so for me, it was also looking for who is that person that maybe has a different lens to look through, that has an expertise that we are missing. And the one thing that stuck out to me was it's Kim, and looking at her expertise in data and what she is currently doing and what she has done in the past. That is something that I think will serve us well. And she's, just how she was prepared and already looking forward to what would an SEL goal look like? What are things we need to keep in mind? So for me, she rose to the level, to that top level for me. And definitely, I think Jackie and Lennon both have great experiences and their own individual niches and expertise to bring to the board table. But data was one thing that that I thought was extremely important. And she's ready to go. She carried the long haul with running a campaign. She's maintained, some people may get discouraged and not want to engage. She remained engaged and attending board meetings. And she is prepared. So for me, that is one piece that for me elevates Kim to the top.
I'm going to piggyback off of something that Kelly said there about having, that answer that Terry gave. And when I was thinking through this, I appreciate the perspective of both Jackie Norris and Kim Martirano and their expertise that they bring to this. But when I think about perspectives that this board doesn't naturally come with or lived experiences, for me, that was Linan Bakam, and then I also preference Zishan Badani. I think that both of them, but we're talking about those top three that the board had kind of brought into agreement. I think that between that Linan has a perspective that no one on this board has. And I think to me, that's incredibly valuable. And for a long time since I came onto the board, I've been wondering about, the experience of our refugee students, of our immigrant students, of our English language learners. And to me, I think having that valued at the board table is incredibly huge. And I think he's a fast learner. I think for what he might not have that, that Kimberly might have that both Dwana and Kelly raised up, I think the perspective would be incredibly valuable.
This is not easy at all, gang. Like whatever we end up doing today, I hope that the other 8 stay engaged and stay involved, because we can definitely use all of them to complete our goals and to make as much progress as possible. I think for me, it really comes down to what criteria are we most looking for.
Unknown participant is now joining.
I mean, when I wrote my notes last night, I wrote the things you guys are already saying, right? I think Jackie is the most polished and the most ready to step in 10 years ago. She's ready to roll. She knows the score and she knows procedures. Kim is clearly very enthusiastic. She's been paying attention. I've noticed her at the meetings as well. We talked a couple of weeks ago, and that's one thing I mentioned. Like, this is not a surprise that you applied. You've been engaged the whole time. And then Linan does have that interesting perspective. None of us has that perspective. That is unique. That would be unique to the board. I think he would have the biggest learning curve. I mean, I have no doubt that he'll pick it up and that he's very intelligent. But jumping in with both feet, I think, would be my one question mark. I'm comfortable with any of these 3. So right now I'm just kind of listening to what everyone else's reasoning is. But for me, it comes down to what is the key criteria, because I could pick any one of the 3 based on which way we roll.
So I think it should be said that really any one of the candidates we could have chosen. allow me one quick digression here from the three that we're discussing. I thought I was impressed by everybody. I was very impressed and very grateful that Emily Westergaard was interested in this board. I think she's, I know her work really well. We're partner with By Degrees and think really highly of what they're doing. The point about backgrounds is, and what do you bring to the table that we don't already have is important to me as well. And that's actually where I had the hardest trouble keeping Nina Richtman out of my top four, because I think, and I want to say this right now because, you know, I'm towards the end of my tenure on this board, and not all of you know, there are plenty of you that'll be in here longer than me. I think we are systemically weak on special education as a board. And I think that, you know, Nina brought a learned experience that would have been really valuable on this board. And you know, I think I'm a big fan of all three that we're discussing right now, but I think as a board, we need to be, I want us to, this is a good opportunity to say that we need to be thoughtful of the special education experience in our district and how plugged in we are to that and how our work influences it. You know, as to the three, I think I would be enthusiastic about having any of them as a board colleague right now. I think the way I look at it is, you know, I think Kim said it really well, actually, that she got 3,000 votes for this seat last year. And that's a big deal. Jackie Norris, I think, is as skilled of an executive as there is, and a leader, and somebody that I would really enthusiastically want to lead this board at some point in time, which is really important to me. And I've known Lennon for about 10 years. You know, everybody that said I think he can pick it up, they're exactly right. He's more than capable of learning this, and we don't often have an opportunity to bring someone who's you know, really second generation in this country onto our board, and that's a big deal. I'm not in any way helping us get closer to a final decision on this. And I don't know that I'm really capable of that, because I can make a really good case for all three of them. The thing that has me thinking about Jackie right now is this board's going to turn over in a couple of years pretty dramatically. And that's been a process that's been underway for about the last 3 or 4 years. And I want to have somebody in place that I think I can see leading this entity, and not necessarily as a chair. You know, there's plenty of opportunities for all 7 members to provide leadership. And so I think highly of her in that regard.
Terry, I see that you raised your hand.
I did. So I really appreciate everyone's perspective on this, and I think I led off with my comments about whoever we select needs to literally be ready to hit the ground when we start this work. And I want to be really respectful of all of the candidates. And last night, as I was sort of evaluating all of the interviews and reviewing my notes and trying to be as thoughtful as I possibly could be, recognizing that this is going to be a pivotal time for our board, recognizing that the 2 senior members, both Rob and I, will be transitioning next year, and really trying to figure out how we sort of set ourselves up for success as that transition takes place, recognizing that the person that moves into this seat likely will be running in a couple of years. I really sort of, you know, went back on sort of the core thing that was driving me to sort of identify the candidates that I thought would be, as I said, shovel ready day one, and it brought me back to both Jackie and Kim. I also want to echo that had I ranked as we were directed to, as opposed to how I chose to, Nina would have been in my top 4, and Lennon would have been in my top 4, with Emily my 5th. And I think my second tier sort of consideration really had as much to do with diversity of thought, opinion, expertise, and background as anything. But I really had to sort of recenter myself back on what I thought we needed at this very moment relative to experience, readiness, preparation, and complement to our current board. And that brought me back to Kim and Jackie. I don't think we can in any way dismiss the fact that Kim ran for this seat and that she garnered 3,000 votes, that she did the work, that she knocked the doors, that, you know, she did what everybody else does to get elected to this board. And, you know, as much as I adore, admire, and love Jackie Norris, someone who I've known for many, many years, I sort of feel like if I have one more tier to really bring some discernment to my decision making, it's what the voters said in the last election. And I sort of feel obligated by that. But moreover, I feel obligated by the time and attention that she put not only into running the race, but that she has put towards staying in touch with what we're doing. So I'm going to take a risk and put a nomination on the floor for Kim Martirano for the vacant District 1 seat.
So I'm curious out of process, do we need a second, or are we already currently in, a motion right now because we're in discussion phase?
Oh, that's right. I think we already had a motion on the floor, didn't we? For the top.
I think to discuss the top 3. So I think, Terry, are you moving to amend the motion that we nominate Kim to fill District 1 vacancy?
I think absolutely.
I think it's an amendment to our first motion.
So then do we need to second?
I think so, yes.
I would second.
Okay, I will open the floor for board discussion on our amended motion. And I realize there might just be some quiet, thoughtful consideration time at this moment for board members, because as we have all acknowledged, I think any of these 9, you know, we could make an argument for why it would be any one of these 9. Actually, as I'm scrolling down the list, my brain is making that argument for each of the candidates. So.
I don't know if there's too much more to say, Kirsten, about, you know, to talk more about Kim. I think with all the candidates, I think we said that we could see any one of them. I stick by the things that I've said as far as her engagement and her involvement and being a part of the process and being ready to go. So, I mean, if there's not too many more comments, I think we could put that to a vote.
So question when it comes to voting here, and I'm not trying to tip my hand or anything, but so when we're just going to vote on this one particular person, and if we prefer someone else, then we should vote no. Is that how this is going to play out?
Correct.
Okay.
Do we need the Jeopardy music?
Perhaps. I'm just trying to weigh pros and cons in my head again. And I guess by cons, it's really like, and I'll just walk my board colleagues through my decision-making process in my head right now, is that I 100% believe that Kim could step in and do this job. What I'm attempting to weigh in my head is if I value a different perspective more, if that makes sense. And I just, that's where mine.
I think people have to vote their conscience. I don't know that it requires much more than that. I mean, it's just like
Right.
when you make a decision about any other candidate in any other race, you do you.
So now that the music has ended, would we I think that was our thinking time. So could we move the process to a vote? Do we need to make a motion for that? So at least
No, if
can-
conversations ended, we can just call a vote. That's fine.
okay.
I see no more need for further discussion.
Okay, if there's no need for further discussion, Ms. Jenkins, will you please call the roll call vote?
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Miss Bradley,
Yes.
Miss Caldwell Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Cody,
No.
Miss Della Gardell,
No.
Miss Sawyer,
Yes.
All right.
4-2.
So the motion passes 4-0. My board colleagues, we have appointed a director to fill the District 1 vacancy. So Kim Martirano will join us to be appointed to this board on August 11th, 2020 will be our swearing in. Just as a little bit of process for both my board colleagues and our community members who are joining us today, what we will plan to do is do a very brief organizational meeting at the beginning of that time at 6 o'clock, where we will swear Kim in, we will seat the new board, and then following that, we will do our regular business meeting. Ms. Martirano will be voting with us on all items except for those which have executive privileged content. So that's, I believe, typically our open enrollment. And since that's now on our consent, we will need to pull that because she won't have access to all of that privileged information until she's seated. I think that's been past practice. I see Kaylin nodding his head. So, and I think Duana said that's what had happened for her too. So if that makes sense to my board colleagues, does anyone have any questions about that or our process moving forward? I've reached out, well, I've had Aaron reach out to AJ to see if there's any good practices on orientating new board members that come from the Council of Great City Schools colleagues across the country to add to our own practices that we do. I will be reaching out to Kim today probably to just discuss kind of what her availability is, and then I will let board members know. I'll also be talking with Tom about when we might be able to get back onto campus and when folks are moving back into the office, because I would like this board, if our students are going back to school in August, I would like this board back on campus prior to that as well. So
Kirsten, just a couple things.
yes.
I would love to offer any input if you want to have a conversation at some point on onboarding, because I have continued to develop things in my head of what I wish I could have had. And so I'm more than happy
Unknown
to sit down with you.
participant is now
Yeah,
exiting.
I would love that, Kelly.
Okay.
I know Duana and I are going to work on that. So if we want to like create a subcommittee, is the board okay with that being Kelly, Duana, and myself to onboard our new board director? Okay, perfect. We created a temporary subcommittee to go ahead and tackle that work. Is there anything else that my board colleagues have for us this morning before?
I see Terry's hand was raised. I didn't know if that was still.
Yep. So, Kelly beat me to the punch. Kelly and I have talked a lot about the onboarding process, and I knew that she had some great ideas. So you have actually just actualized what I was going to suggest. So thank you.
Yes, and in my head last night too, I was like, I bet Kelly's going to want to help with this because I know that you've continued your coaching with AJ. So, and I had actually sent Dwana an email yesterday that she and I need to talk. So why don't the three of us find a time offline and we can visit yet this week, and I'll get some availability from Ms. Martirano too, as well, for when we can do that. And I'll let the board know. We'll post that as an open meeting so that all board members can join and help us welcome our new board colleague. So.
Excellent. And I think, again, I would just echo that we had some amazing candidates, all 18, and then the 9 that we interviewed. And I just want to just share my immense thanks, because this is not easy to sort of put yourself out there and make yourself vulnerable in a situation where you really have limited control. But if the 18 and or the 9 are any representation of what we have in our community and the potential leadership we have out there, I say bring it on. We need it all. Join us in this work. It's so important. So I hope to see you continue to be engaged as we continue to do our work moving forward.
Yeah, and we had a number of folks who I think said that they were interested in running in the future. And I know that I speak for myself, but I also know that other board members always speak to those that are interested in running for elected office. Particularly, I'm looking at Rob. I know that he does a lot of that mentorship. He did for me when it was my time too. So if we have folks out there that are interested in running next year, I welcome any and all people to reach out to me to ask about that process. And I'm sure my board colleagues, we all ran campaigns. So I always say I will talk to anyone who wants to run. So without any business before us, if board members have nothing else related to orientation or onboarding our new board colleague, I feel comfortable adjourning this meeting if no one has anything else. All right, I will adjourn this special meeting at 8:34 a.m.
Welcome,
Great.
Kim.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.